And joining me now is Assistant Trade and Manufacturing Minister Tim Ayres. Thanks very much for coming in.
It's a pleasure.
What is the government doing for the shipping industry at this time?
Well, there's a number of things here that the government's responding to international developments in terms of inflation. We've seen the impact that the Russia-Ukraine war has had on energy prices around the world, and of course the corollary of what's going on in the Middle East in terms of security in the Middle East. And the behaviour and conduct of the Houthi group in Yemen, putting in danger Red Sea shipping, does have an effect on shipping around the world. What it underscores is that Australia's security depends upon very much the rules-based international order being stable, and so that the security questions, whether it's in Europe with Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine or the Middle East questions, have a direct effect on Australia's security and on our economic resilience. That's why, of course, we have taken the approach that we've taken to inflation. Budget surpluses, the first two back-to-back budget surpluses in nearly 20 years, and all of the cost of living relief, including tax cuts for every single Australian taxpayer and energy bill relief, all of these are part of the government's calibrated approach to the inflation challenge.
What has the industry told you about what it's experiencing in terms of the extent of this current crisis? What sort of products are stuck and how many?
Well, these developments are not new. They have been a feature of the global shipping environment since the Middle East crisis, and since the security developments in the Red Sea have had an impact on the duration and cost of shipping travel to Australia. Now, Australia is at the end of the Southeast Asian archipelago. We rely upon trade with the world, and so this does have an effect on Australia, whether it's congested shipping container terminals in Singapore or Malaysia or more broadly in the region. It has an impact on our imports and on our exports to the world. That's again why, as part of the approach that we're taking in a less certain world, is to protect Australia's trading relationships with the world, diversifying our trading relationships and building economic resilience into our supply chains, and why the Future Made in Australia agenda is so important, so that we're building our own capacity, our own economic resilience and our own capacity to trade with the world.
We are hearing that the current situation is going to push up prices and potentially be inflationary. Are you concerned about that? Well,
let's see. I think that these are not new developments. They have been feeding into prices for some time. This conflict in the Middle East has been going on for 9 terrible months. This is one of the spillover issues that has arisen for Australia because of that conflict. It'll have been feeding into shipping patterns and to prices for some time. What this government will do in a disciplined way is deal with the things that we can deal with. We can deal with delivering the first 2 back-to-back budget surpluses in nearly 20 years. We have delivered that with discipline. We can deliver cost of living relief to Australian households that doesn't put up inflation. We can have an impact on prices that way. That's what the government's doing, and that's why we're prosecuting Australia's interests overseas, whether it's the security work that Richard Marles, the Deputy Prime Minister, is doing at NATO, or whether it's the trade work that Don Farrell is leading on behalf of the government, deepening and making more resilient our supply chains around the world.
Now, speaking of Richard Marles at NATO, the Secretary-General of NATO has labelled China a decisive enabler of Russia's war against Ukraine. What do you make of that statement? Do you agree?
Well, it's certainly true, and the Foreign Minister has made this point. China is emerging as a power in the region and the world, and it should exercise that power thoughtfully and responsibly. And it is not in the interests of global peace and security for Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine to be given any comfort or any support. That's why the Australian government has not only taken a broad range of sanctions, the broadest range in memory, against Russian figures and institutions. Also, we've provided a very significant package of support to Ukraine. But there, with Richard Marles leading that at NATO today, or in all of our diplomatic efforts around the world, encouraging our partners and friends around the world to provide the maximum support to Ukraine. Security in Europe, security in the Middle East matters for Australia's security in our region and around the world.
Tim Ayres, we have to leave it there, but thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks.